My name is Michael McGarvey. I'm a professor of art at Stockton University. So I've been teaching there about 30 years. I was hired to start the graphic design program, which I did. Since that time, which is around 1984, things became increasingly involved in terms of graphic design with the computer and with digital means of production rather than photographic. But my background before that was in fine art, and then I went to graduate school for graphic design. So teaching on the computer kind of got me away from more traditional methods. When I did illustration as well, sometimes I used traditional methods, certainly always used drawing on paper and used my hands. And so after a while of teaching on the computer and then eventually even doing illustration on the computer, I decided that I wanted to get my hands more involved and also be more involved with the entire process rather than doing the artwork, sending it off, and then kind of it just coming back finished. So having nothing to do with the production process was something that I found not quite satisfying in the way of producing a piece from the beginning to the end. So I guess in a way a little bit more of a craft or handcrafted aspect to what it was that I was producing. I decided to start doing wood engraving. I tried that first, and then I kind of needed a way to print these properly. I started with a old wringer press. That didn't quite work out, and then I got this hand press, and with it comes all this type and all this stuff. So then I decided that I would try to make a book, because to me a book is the greatest expression of ideas, both verbal and visual, in Western civilization. And so I was very excited about that idea, and I first did a book with Stephen Dunn using his poems and engravings. And then I've recently completed this book project using my grandfather's memoirs. And I'm involved now with a book that I hope to be well underway, if not published, next year with Peter Murphy. And again, I'm taking his poems and incorporating engraved imagery with those. If you think about, for example, the computer is just sort of the ultimate in a reproductive process. That mechanization of a handcraft that I kind of talked about in talking about the engravings, but also setting type. In particular, the setting of type is really the first mechanization of a handcraft in Western civilization. In other words, rather than writing a book using calligraphy, which was done prior to that, Gutenberg came up with the idea of casting these letter forms, making a matrix, casting them, reproducing them, using them, and putting them back. So that replaced the hand production of books, let's say illuminated manuscripts during that time. And So I'm still dealing with the idea of reproduction. It's very important. I consider myself in a way a graphic artist, which is to say that I am dealing with aspects of reproduction, of imagery. These engravings are a little closer to my actual hand because the matrix is made by hand, as opposed to, let's say I draw something and then it's reproduced photomechanically, or even a scan, for example. You scan in a drawing, or even producing directly on a computer. So I like that fact, and I also like the fact of being able to deal with what is the paper, which of course is intimately tied in with books, the development of paper and the use of paper in Western civilization. There's a tactile quality to the paper, there's a material quality to the paper that is an object that is quite different from, let's say, when I would produce something and it would just be reproduced using offset lithography. I felt a need not only to use my hands more, but to have a more personal connection to the actual object that's produced. And that maybe does tie into my fine arts background, where I feel that there's an importance to that. And even though I'm producing multiples, whether it be single prints or books, that a person viewing that multiple that is printed, I mean, it's essentially printed by hand, but the type of paper, the selection of the paper, the kind of imagery, all of those things are tied together, and you can't separate them. I mean, the ink literally becomes part of the fibers of the paper, what that paper is, how it's calendared, your decisions in terms of light and dark patterns, the design itself, all of those things ideally become one whole.